This is Phantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, welcome back, members of the crew of the Rocinante. So this is going to be Phantology's episode covering Caliban's War. I am Jake, your host for the evening, and I am joined here by my lifelong friends, Ryan and Ben. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
How are you guys feeling? Excited to review book 2? I feel like we kicked Josh out because he hated the first book. No, we didn't.
Well, he hasn't read this one yet. So.
Yeah, which is because he hated Leviathan Wakes, but wasn't as big of a fan of it, we'll say.
Yeah.
So, I feel like the consensus on Leviathan Wakes, minus Josh's opinion, was that it was a good debut novel, but maybe not quite as good as we were expecting it to be based on the popularity of the Expanse novels as a whole.
Yeah, it's like
go ahead, Ben.
I agree with that. I think that for sure, like it suffered from too much buildup for Josh, I think.
I wasn't disappointed based off of expectations. I was pleasantly surprised at how much I liked it. Part of that is because I saw the first season of the TV show, which I thought was okay, but I thought the book was I thought the first season of the TV show was like a 6.5 out of 10 through most of it. And then the end got pretty good. Whereas I thought this book was like an 8 out of 10 the whole time.
Yeah.
Or this book, I mean, Leviathan Wakes. But I think we all kind of rated it around a 7 or 8 out of 10. But all of our ratings are subject, like, mean different things. Like an 8 for me is not the same as an 8 for Josh or you guys. Yeah.
So based on, I think that I don't think I was disappointed by Leviathan Wakes. I think that I was just expecting it to be maybe a little bit better than it was. But I still thought it was a good read. And I thought it's unique and interesting how 2 separate authors are writing different chapters and then revising each other's works. I think that the method of writing the book is very interesting as well. And so I like I said, I think it was a good debut novel. They hadn't written any novels prior to that. And so it's strong considering all of those factors.
I agree with that. Did they do it the same way on this book? Because there wasn't so much of a 2 viewpoint, swing back and forth style.
There was Roberta
Bobby.
Draper and Bobby, and there was Miller, or not
Holden.
Miller, Holden.
Fair. So do you know that they each took one point of view?
I'm not sure. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt similar in terms of the writing. Like, I didn't feel like the writing changed a whole bunch in terms of,
I agree with that.
the whole vibe of it. What do you guys think?
I wanted to know your guys' opinions really quickly, based on if you felt that this book was how it compares to the first book, whether you thought it was better, the same, or worse.
Ooh, okay. I mean, I'm going to say it was a better book, but it was a worse book for setting up the series to be what I hope it would be, if that makes sense. So I would have hoped that
I feel like Ben always says he makes his. No, I was going to say hedge, but that was kind of a hedge. I was just going to say they're so complicated.
No, it's not complicated. It's more like, okay, like, for example, Jake, you haven't read Dresden. For those Dresden fans out there, there's a point in the series where it stops being like little self-contained plots. And though you still have self-contained plots, it's like building up more of like a overarching narrative. And I would have hoped that would happen for the Expanse, where we would get like some overarching narrative, but it looks like this book was like another self-contained plot.
I mean, I would disagree a little bit with you because I do think that there are certain things being built on the narrative. Like we're getting more into the politics of Earth, the UN, and Mars. We're with Avasarala, who I think she's also, Avasarala is another viewpoint. So
Yeah.
She and Bobby are both added, but I think that with those viewpoints, we're getting more of the overall story, as well as the Rocinante is, what they're doing, what their affiliation is, both with the Belters, maybe not going off on their own, things like that. But I do think I see your point that it still does have a neatly contained plot within this book.
I mean, I agree with those points. Like it is setting stuff up, but you could argue that the first book also set similar stuff up with like their alliance with the OPA and stuff. Like, I mean, they were still like political stuff happening that could have been expanded upon, but it seemed like in book 2, it just kind of like blank slate, new conflict. Like, I agree that I hope that book 3 builds on like some of the political machinations that are happening in book 2, but that's what I was also hoping that book 2 would do for book 1, and it just kind of didn't. So that's where I was a little disappointed.
So getting back to my original question, better, the same, or worse than book 1?
I'm gonna go worse for that reason.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with what been in this quick question that Ryan asked.
This is sorry,
we'll have to circle back. I think this book was a little worse than book 1. Yeah, I think Leviathan Wakes was a better book.
I am also going to agree with you guys. I think it was a little worse. The conflict didn't feel quite as high stakes for me.
That's also true. Yeah.
And I kind of miss the Miller viewpoint as well. I don't think that I like Bobby quite as much as I liked Miller. And I think that was, although Avasarala was
I liked her
interesting.
A lot. Yeah, I liked her
she was pretty good. Maybe I like Avasarala a little bit more than Miller. But overall, I just didn't necessarily feel quite as attached to Prax. And because so much of this story revolves around him losing his daughter. And although I think the idea of like a parent losing their child and kind of clinging to the idea that they need to find them like above all else, I mean, that's practically what he clings to for his own survival. I think that should be a little bit more like emotional than it evoked for me.
At least that's more believable than the kind of driving narrative of the first book, right?
With Miller,
yeah.
And what was Juliet Mao?
Yeah,
Juliet Mao. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was just as believable.
I mean,
an inspector.
I think most people can relate to wanting to get back your child more so than a detective obsessing over perhaps in an inappropriate way, like a case that you're working on, you know.
I think obviously like one is more universal, but I don't think it's like any less valid.
I mean,
but
yeah, okay, that's fair.
All right, so we have 3 people, all 3 of us say that we think Caliban's war is at least a small step down from Leviathan Wakes.
I think for those same reasons. I don't think the stakes were high enough throughout most of the book. It wasn't as page turning as the first book, whereas there's lots of like new developments in book 1 that keep you on the edge of your seat and like keep you trying to figure out what's going on and like how these pieces are going to fit together. I feel like this book suffered from like a very prolonged slow middle.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
What were we gonna say, Ryan?
No, that was it. I think that I agree with you because in my mind, this book has the initial opening, which is where we're introduced to Bobby, where she is, there's like confusion they think the UN troops are attacking them, and it turns out that they're actually fleeing from one of these protomolecule soldiers that was created. And so this is one thing that I think I like that the show did better. And I don't know that you guys watched the show up to this point, but in the show, they leave it ambiguous as to what actually happens to Bobby, because she like kind of sees the UN soldiers coming and starts to attack, and then she basically like wakes up and isn't sure what happens.
That's
and
cool.
Then later on, she kind of finally realizes that like she was like repressing her memory, and so I kind of like that because it leaves the mystery around this event for much longer. Whereas with this, right, or pretty much right away that the UN soldiers are fleeing from the protomolecule, and it's more like her trying to get through the politicking that Mars is doing around this event. And people don't care as much that it's a protomolecule soldier. It's more just like, trying to not play your hand too early and see what the UN's trying to do and figuring out how much you can get out of it. So it wasn't quite as, I guess, as intriguing to me, the way that the show posed this book.
Interesting. Yeah, I need to catch up on the show, like catch up to where I've read.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm debating. Just I think I'm just gonna read all the books and then watch the show.
I don't agree. I mean, how much longer do we want to go? No spoilers.
I think we should move into spoilers.
I mean, I did kind of start spoiling a bit.
That's true.
So.
Yeah, that's true. I will say I disagree with Ben saying that this kind of like blank slates it. I agree that this is kind of a self-contained adventure. I think you do need to have context from Leviathan Wakes to fully understand it, but it does end in a way where it feels like it could almost end, just be like done for now.
I mean, that's kind of a good litmus test though. Like how, like if you had not read Leviathan Wakes, you could have followed this, man. You could have.
You would have no context with the protomolecule though. You'd have no context for what it was before and like why it is so scary. Like, and I don't think it being self-contained is really like a weakness of itself. I disagree that it was a blank slate in terms of like what it's building. I think it's building off of the political dynamics they established in the first book, and it's a like direct continuation of it. And I think it's a continuation in an interesting way, like how everyone was so scared at the end of Leviathan Wakes, like all sides were scared of what was going to happen. And this was an interesting, you saw interesting political maneuvering of, okay, something dangerous is out there. How do we take advantage of this situation versus how do we, ensure our own survival here, like to the detriment of anyone else. And so I thought that was a good continuation of it. I am disappointed that there wasn't more that happened. But like I really enjoyed Avasarala, or however you say that. Yeah, I'm trying to get all the syllables in there.
No, I enjoyed her too, but like imagine book 3 just doesn't have her in it at all. That's kind of how it felt like to me from book 1 with like whoever that like the leader of the OPA was. Like he had like 2 scenes that he was in or something.
He was in like 2 scenes in book 1 though. Like he was never a major character.
You mean Frank Jackson?
Frederick Johnson?
I mean, yeah. So
Frederick Johnson.
It was good enough.
Frank Jackson.
Maybe he wasn't in the book a ton, but they were still like they ended up. He pulled a lot of strings. They ended up working underneath them. And
he wasn't a POV character like Avasarala. I don't think that's a good comparison.
Okay, but they still ended up. You would have thought that they would have continued on a relationship with him more than they did. I felt like, at least.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, it's hard because like it was sad that relationship ended, but also that was part of like the character growth there.
Yeah. Like he wasn't gonna be a trigger man anymore.
well, I mean, not being the trigger man, and like Holden's whole internal struggle with like trying to figure out who he's supposed to be, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think those are the biggest weaknesses for me. Like I felt like the beginning was super action packed in a cool way and set up some interesting conflict, like the little bit of political mystery, the search and find the lost daughter thing. That was good too. And then I felt like for what I thought the climax was good, but for what the climax accomplished plot wise, the story could have been a lot shorter.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I don't know. I didn't really feel disappointed or like bored while reading it. It's just when it was done, I was like, oh, that ended cool. And then I'm like, dang, I didn't feel like I wanted like a bigger adventure. This felt like a side quest more than a main quest. But
so when I think of the middle of this book, I think of a lot of maneuvering around Ganymede. I mean, the Rocinante goes there and they meet up with Prax and learn about Prax's daughter missing. And they decide we're going to do something good and help him find his daughter. And then through this, they eventually, I don't even really remember how they learn about like the connection and then eventually find where the daughter was being held right before she gets launched off into space.
He was like trying to fundraise and send messages to people, and then someone was like recognize some faces. It was like crowdsourcing to solve the problem.
Okay. Well, and Ganymede felt a little bit like a repeat of Eros. It's like this
a little bit,
this satellite station where you have a lot of people, but it's like still kind of contained. I mean, I guess it has to be contained, right? There, it's in space.
They're all built,
but then you have this catastrophe that kind of destroys it, and they're escaping from it.
And it was weird how they made such a big deal in the book about how Ganymede was like the bread bowl of the galaxy, right? Like it was responsible for, but like we didn't really see any fallout from that.
Like you think this would be a bigger issue than Eros falling,
right?
Well, I guess like the way Eros fell was a bigger deal, but just the loss of Eros versus the loss of Ganymede, this should have been.
I mean, we haven't really seen any long-term consequences of it because there hasn't been like a long time period since it. And on Ganymede, we did see that a lot of these corporations were like kind of stealing whatever food, harvesting whatever food was like left over, the crops, and then shipping it off of Ganymede. And that was a big issue for people there who were literally starving because these big corporations were just stealing it because they own theirs and then shipping it off. So I mean, maybe supply hasn't had or there hasn't been enough time for the supply to be interrupted for the rest of the galaxy.
I mean, I feel like if COVID taught us anything, it's that supply gets interrupted pretty quickly.
And especially in an ecosystem or an economy like the Expanse is set up, like it seems very fragile,
And so I hope that book 3 will kind of address that, right? Like you would hope that, and if it does, then I'll kind of recant that criticism, because like Ryan said, we did see kind of the initial fallout of like, harvesting those resources away from the citizenry.
Yeah.
And that was a cool scene. I'll give it that. So
what were some of your guys' positive takeaways? I can start with, I thought the end was pretty cool. Like the race to catch up when all the characters kind of meet up with each other. I thought that was done pretty well. And then that like battle at the end and Holden boarding the ship, that whole sequence, I thought that was a pretty cool space conflict. But I think the standout one was when the proto molecule monster was on their ship in the storage room. That whole sequence, like realizing it's there and trying to get it out, I thought that was really cool.
Okay.
That was one of the most intense parts of the books for me.
See,
you hated it?
I didn't. No. I didn't know if we were going to do worst of the best, but that was going to be my worst of the best. It was so cool, like that the monster is like on their ship, but I feel like they got a get out of jail free card from it. You know, like the amount of destruction that it caused, like earlier, and like being like nigh invincible, and they kind of were able to just like boot it out and then kill it with the engines. I don't know. It was, again, I agree that it was like a sweet scene, but I feel like it had to get out of jail free card with it.
I just kept thinking of the Alien movies with it. I don't know if there's an intentional callback to it, and maybe that's just why I liked it. I don't know.
I had a couple of ideas of what I thought was going to happen at that point. I thought that it was going to turn out to be Prax's daughter, and somehow he would recognize her. And then I also thought that somehow they would recognize, wait, this isn't trying to kill us. Like, maybe we shouldn't try to kill it. And then somehow I don't know if they were going to communicate or just understand it a bit better. But I mean, I guess it did kind of lead to them understanding it better, because they learned about how they're trying to control them. And then they know that the control like degrades over time, which is why they implant a bomb on them. And then they also learn that these creatures are learning to adapt by ridding themselves of the bomb.
I think so. I think my favorite part of this book was, I think that character growth was handled a lot better in it. So for example, I think that Holden and Naomi's relationship actually like developed in a realistic and thoughtful way.
That was good.
So, and I also I really like Prax's character growth, like going from like just concerned about his crops, like he's like, I can't let the crops die, like that's my life's work, to just being concerned about his daughter and being like so focused on that, and then kind of accomplishing that mission while growing and becoming like a competent, like I felt like Prax's character growth was pretty solid throughout it all.
Yeah, and I liked how he brought out like Amos's, like a different side of Amos's character.
That was cool too.
Kind of rounded that out. Yeah,
I like how Amos, there was a part where he thought that that Prax might have like molested his daughter or whatever, and Prax was like, no, I didn't, and what if I had, or something, and Amos was like, oh, I would have killed you.
He was like, you would have still, like, people make mistakes, you would have still been a good person. And Prax was like, no, I wouldn't have. And he's like, good. Like, if he had answered that wrong, then Amos probably would have.
Amos definitely became like a lot more menacing through like scenes like that, which again, character growth was really good. Like okay, this guy is good to have on your team, but
I like how he gave Prax a gun in the beginning. He's like, no, he deserves to have a gun. And then Prax immediately asks it up with it. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to take that back.
It's like, probably wasn't the best idea to give him a gun.
That was a great scene.
Things like that made it really, and it could be just that we know that it was based off of like a role-playing game, but things like that plot-wise made me really think of that.
I think just to get back to what you originally asked, some of our like favorite parts from the book, I think my number one part is growing an understanding of the protomolecule, because for me that's one of the most fascinating parts, and it is the overarching plot line from the first book. I mean, the first book, we're introduced to it, we kind of see what it's capable of on its own. The second part, we're now learning a bit more of people trying to weaponize the protomolecule and why that's bad. And then also at the end, we see that Venus is learning, like it can communicate with other protomolecules, and it's learning, and we're still not really sure what it's doing, but intrigued by that.
Yeah.
And then,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, my other part that I liked was just learning, along with Ava Sorella, I like her as a character, and how she kind of has this like attitude, or she's like swearing a lot, and
super mean to people.
super mean to people. And at first you're kind of like, oh, it's just another um, like girl character who's overcompensating, um, trying to trying to just like overexpress themselves, like be foul mouthed in
Yeah.
order to, yeah, I guess just overcompensate. But then later on, we learn that um, she does that because like before, people kind of thought she was like soft,
Yeah.
or like they didn't really take her seriously. And she still kind of is that way, but it's like a facade she puts on in order
Yeah.
to I can't remember exactly how she said it, to basically like um, get people to listen to her or take her seriously. Um, and learning more about the UN government, where like the deputy or the prime minister, what's his, is he the deputy secretary or
I
the
don't
secretary
remember.
general? He's basically like a figurehead who is like charismatic but kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But it's really Avasarala and oh, what's the other guy's name who turned out to be bad?
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember. I like, I don't remember, but yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting, like the political maneuvering going on between them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really made me think of Game of Thrones. I think it was almost as good as Game of Thrones politicking at the heights of it.
Yeah. I could see that.
The stakes didn't feel quite as high because
Yeah.
people weren't dying like Game of
But like,
Thrones.
I feel like Avasarla could be in the Game of Thrones world, and it'd be fun to see her like and see what she could do there. You know?
She would be the Olenna Martell.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Very
of
much so.
yeah, of I don't know if you remember her, Ben. She is the one that, well, I don't want to give any Game of Thrones spoilers.
One kind of more critique I had was I forget the guy's name, but like the guy that at the very end of it, it kind of connects it back to Leviathan Wakes, and he's like the father of the girl that disappeared in the first one. What?
Oh, Julie Mao's dad.
Yeah,
Jules
Somebody
Pierre
Mao.
Mao.
Jules Pierre Mao.
that was kind of again one of those things where it felt very shoehorned in. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I kind
I
of
can see
appreciate
that.
the closure, but like that could have also happened at the end of Leviathan Wakes, and it would have felt a lot more like satisfactory than, because he wasn't really. I mean, he was involved in this one, but it didn't seem realistic that he would be. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that. I didn't think it was like I didn't think it suspended my disbelief or
Well,
whatever it's called.
I'm trying to remember the ending of Leviathan Wakes, but it seems almost like he gets away with it in the end of Leviathan
Yeah.
Wakes.
Well, I just didn't
Because
know. I didn't know he was involved with it, right? Like I thought it was just like the evil scientist group, you know?
yeah, I think at the end of Leviathan Wakes, he's like, yeah, I own Protogen, but I own a lot of different places, and I don't
Uh,
know,
Yeah.
what they all do. Um, and maybe I had seen the show, so I knew that he was more related to it. But when I read that, I was just kind of like, it seems like somebody who's, very smart and good at getting away with things, like what they would say.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I guess like if that was, I mean, I guess I didn't really pick up on that in the first in the Leviathan Wakes either. But again, I wish that he would have been more of like a threat to them, or like been somehow more like personally involved in the narrative and like trying to like keep them away from unraveling the mystery or something. It just seemed like it just happened, like they kind of solved it, and then he was the guy that was there to kind of get revenge on.
Hmm.
So I don't know. That was, yeah.
Well, I do want to bring up one thing. As we talked about reviewing this, Ben said he had a
Okay,
great
yeah.
argument for
I'm
why
ready for
James
this.
Holden and Miller are the same character or something.
Listen, if
So
you remember,
let's hear him out. Let's
okay,
give him
I
a
will
chance.
say I recognize. Okay, if you go back and listen to the Leviathan Wakes episode, one of my big beefs with the book was that Miller and Holden felt like very iterative of the same type of character. They both had like similar, I don't know, personalities to me. And I messaged our Fantology group and was like, it kind of seems like I was justified, because all of a sudden Holden is like being accused of acting a lot like Miller in the second book. Like, this is why Julie is like leaving him and stuff, or Naomi is leaving him. So it's, and I understand the thing that Jake
Do you
is
understand
say,
how that is?
The thing is, Jake is going to say
like,
is that means that he wasn't acting like
exactly
like Miller in the first book. But,
exactly, because his whole arc in this book is he's becoming too much like Miller.
Right, but that means that they were close enough to begin with that he could merge that into a personality. Wait, like for example,
No.
if you have
No.
if there's two people that are like polar opposites of each other, they're never gonna start
They weren't
like
polar
each other.
opposites. They weren't polar opposites.
But
they were foils to each other.
If you have two people that are very similar to each other and one of them has this moral guidance that the other one lacks, right? I see that like they are foils to each other in that way, but a lot of their other personality traits were the same. And so they start, all of a sudden Holden is being accused of acting a lot like Miller. I still think that justifies me a little bit. I think that we need Ryan to be the referee.
No, let me refute.
Okay.
And it is what you said, but I want to say it more clearly. The fact that his conflict in this book and character growth revolves around him changing into being like Miller, and him changing into Miller is negatively affecting his relationships around him and causing him more trouble. That whole thing is like straight up contradicts the idea that he was just Miller before.
But when you're reading that he was changing into Miller, it still felt like Holden, but yet he was acting a lot like Miller, right? So that means like
it felt like Holden acting like Miller.
Well,
all right, Ryan, settle this debate once and for all.
Well, I don't know if this is gonna settle it, but I felt like Holden wasn't really acting much like Miller acted. I never thought of like Miller.
You took the third option.
I felt like Miller wasn't really like, oh man, he wasn't like a going in guns blazing type of guy. I mean, he did take action.
He wasn't guns blazing, but he was more willing,
ruthless.
He's more willing to be ruthless in this one.
I thought a better comparison was that Holden was becoming more like Amos.
Yeah, and Amos and Miller are pretty similar in that regard.
So,
well, look, Naomi didn't see it that way. So,
I guess, I mean, I would probably side a bit more with Jake on this, just because, I mean, the fact that they're saying Naomi's like, you're turning into Miller, this isn't you, means that, you know, she knows that he isn't like Miller as a person. He's totally different.
But close enough that they could that he could like within a few months kind of start acting a lot like him.
That close enough argument. What is that?
That is
I will take this.
Argument.
I will take this as a continuation of my winning streak here on Fantology. Okay. I won the trivia. I'm winning this.
After this episode comes out, we're going to do a poll on the Expanse channel on Discord, and we'll see. We'll see.
We should. We really should. We should do more polls on Discord. Join our Discord.
The other thing is that when Ben said he, like, the ending of the book, like, lent credence to his argument, I thought it was going a totally different way, because at the very end of the book, Holden sees Miller. And so I thought Ben was going to say that this is kind of like Miller is like a figment of Holden's imagination, and this was going to be like a whole Fight Club type thing. And Ben was going to have like a theory where
standing watching New York.
Oh man.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that is an out there theory, but I was here for it if Ben was going to go with that.
No, mine was much more of a plain text interpretation.
Yeah, that's really funny. Well, I'm glad we got to continue that debate. I hope this is an ongoing debate for the whole.
That kind of gives you guys a peek into what we talk about on our like small 5-person Fantology Discord. We're like arguing about
as we get ready to review the series,
yeah.
We're kind of
I have a question for you guys. Another question. So based on the first 2 books and eliminating any prior knowledge you had of the Expanse, like the success of it and how people like the series, just based on your experience reading the first 2 books, do you think you guys would continue the series reading the 3rd book?
Yes. I'll tell you quickly, because I like books like this where they have a very like low barrier to entry, right? Like I can wait a long time between Expanse books and just like kind of read it in between what like my other bigger reads, which is like the same reason why I like Dresden. Like I'm able to pick them back up, and so that means that when I'm ready for like a filler book like that, then I'll pick up an Expanse book.
So that's interesting, because for you, your main credits to this are basically just I guess not the content so much as
well,
how the structure of the books are.
Well, it's funny because that's also my criticism, was that it wasn't like starting to build on itself, and like I don't feel like I need to remember anything right between the books, whereas like you read like a Stormlight book and you're trying to like keep a dozen different characters straight in your head and trying to like remember where everybody's left off, whereas Expanse, I'm like, okay, like as long as I remember generally what happened, I can pick up the 3rd book and be good to go.
I'm excited to continue, just because if it can reach the same height book 1 had for me, I would be satisfied. But I think it has the potential to do a lot better than that. And even apart from that, even if like the next book is even worse than the 2nd book, I guess I shouldn't say even worse. I would give the 2nd book probably like a 6.5, 7 out of 10. So not the 8 out of 10 I thought Leviathan Wakes was, but not a horrible book. But even if it's like a 6 out of 10, the 3rd book, I would still keep reading to try to see like, what are they going to do with this? There's just so much potential for the plot here and for what things could happen, like really interesting things, that I think I would keep reading for that alone.
Yeah, that's also true. Like there's big like overarching mysteries that I'm excited for them to resolve. What about you, Ryan?
I think that my primary motivation in this series going forward is, one, because we're reading it as Fantology, and so that increases my enjoyment of it, and 2, because I know that other people really like the series. I don't think that my primary motivation going forward is
interesting
because of what I've experienced in the book so far. I do think that the proto-molecule storyline is really interesting to me, and I think that plot line is more interesting to me than the characters so far.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So I don't remember exactly what I rated Leviathan Wakes, but I think that I would rate Caliban's War a 7 out of 10. No,
7 out of 14.
7. I don't know. Maybe a 6.75.
6.75. Nice.
I don't know. I mean, it's just a weird threshold in my mind. I'm like, I don't know that it's quite a 7, but I mean,
yeah.
Anyways,
yeah. I think I'm like that. I definitely think Fantology is increasing the reading enjoyment for me. I also think that I don't know, like series that are too complicated that I don't get into on the 1st or 2nd book, for example Malazan, I just can't bring myself to do it. I'm not saying I won't ever read Malazan, but like after the 1st book and a half, I just like I couldn't like stay into it, so but I feel like Expanse doesn't have that problem for me. I'm able to like put it down for a long time and then still be excited to pick it up months later. So
so we're kind of running out of time here, so it looks like 6 or 7 out of 10 is what we're ranking this one.
Yeah.
Excited to see what's moving forward. Really excited to see more about the proto molecule. Honestly, speaking of predictions earlier or guesses while you were reading it, I thought we were going to find out, like we did find out that Venus was communicating with those proto soldiers.
Mhm.
I thought there was going to be more of a connection in this book. So I'm excited to see that develop more. And obviously that big reveal cliffhanger with Miller at the end. I'm excited to see where that's going.
I'm also excited to see Bobby kind of evolve more as a character. She was a standout. And Avalisara. I'm excited for them to continue in the series.
That she's the one character who I think is more interesting than the proto molecule so far. And maybe Miller now too, because he's got, I mean, that's kind of a cop-out because he is somehow connected to the proto molecule. He may be the proto molecule at this point. I don't know.
No, Julie's the proto molecule.
Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. This has been fun. Make sure you check us out on Discord. See our link for Audible in the description. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
That's it.
Bye.